A lot of organizations, especially associations, have a really powerful thing at their disposal, a tool that could impact public policy and make the differences they want to see made, and yet they don't take advantage of it. So I've got Rich Carter here, our government affairs director. He's our guy for this. He does this with a lot of our clients, and we're going to talk about how do you engage not necessarily your members' employees. And just me saying that probably freaked out like half of you, because that's the response we get, right? As people get freaked out by this, we hear it a lot. Oh, can I do that? I'm really nervous about that. Here's a couple things of why you should do it. First thing I'll say, and then I'll pass it to maybe your first idea here. First thing I'll say is a lot of our clients in this space, their members ask them to do it for them. You see, you can, as the association, do this for your member companies. The employers are nervous to do it. They don't want to engage their employees because they're afraid of certain rules that they have to face. Their HR department coming after them. There's a lot of things that get them to say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to touch this. And so actually they want you as the association to do this. That way there's a degree of separation. So it's a huge value add you can provide to your members, and it's necessary. What are other reasons why this is a huge benefit and why people should be doing this?
Well, I think first of all, Collin, I mean, the employees are so important. There's so many of them. For example, if you have 100 members, you may have 5,000 employees. I mean, if you're looking to get them involved in the political process, you need to go to the employees. It's number one.
Yeah, I think of the power that brings where, yes, having 100 members is awesome, and it gets you press recognition, it gets you elected officials to recognize you when you maybe sign on to something or make a phone call, but that doesn't impact the electorate very much. That's 100 voters if they're all registered to vote and if they all live in Illinois. Ultimately, you need, if you want to make an impact on the political process, you need numbers, you need quantity, and that's why you've got to get below that owner down to the actual employees, because now you get quantity, and that can really impact the political process. And what we've seen is, even though those individual employees, if you look them up in the voter record, they might be more left of center as individuals, but when they're engaged by an association or by their business, what we've seen is that they're gettable to vote for those business interests, whether it be for or against a referendum that might hurt their business, hurt their jobs, whether it be for or against a candidate who's going to help their jobs or hurt their jobs. We've seen that no matter what their voting history is in the past, when they're engaged this way, they are open and willing to vote the way you'd like them to vote. And maybe in certain situations you can't be as forthright about, vote X, do this. I get that. We'll talk about how you do this to be careful. But you, of course, know which way you want them to vote and which officials you want them to support and not support and which issues you want them to vote down or vote up. And we've seen that be tremendously successful, even with voters who in their personal life tend to vote for politicians that don't align with that, right?
Totally. I mean, the key is, Collin, you need to get them to understand the issues that are important, not only to their jobs, but to their families, because most of the time they're the same.
Yeah, and they don't see that. If they don't hear it from you or from them employers or from somebody who's aligned with your side, which there aren't that many groups out there, all they're hearing is the other narrative. There are groups out there that are already putting out the other side. And so if they don't hear a competing side, a competing story, they're going to go with what they know, what they hear. And more often than not, that's not going to be beneficial to your association. That's not going to be beneficial to your members. Do you really trust that whatever those employees are hearing in the media or from the far left politicians that tend to get most of the press in the state or tend to have the bigger budget, so they're on TV, they're in mailboxes, that narrative that they're hearing is probably not your narrative. And so if you don't get your side to those employees, then they're going to vote against their own interests, against their business's interests, against your interests. But as we said, when they start to learn, when they're educated on how these issues impact them, their families, their careers, their future job opportunities, their prospects, it changes entirely. It's a whole new ballgame. There are massive benefits here. So please, I know it's a scary way to get involved here, and we've had lots of clients who are nervous about it, but when they start to do it, they realize how much of an impact it has. So dip your toe in this, start to get involved in this, and we're going to talk about how you can do that to make sure you're staying above board. So that first thing is going to be understanding what this is and what this isn't. Rich, how long does something like this take to make happen, to create?
Boy, I think this takes place over several election cycles. I think, it takes time to do this because the last thing you really want to do is to come into the workplace and just tell your employees, you need to go vote, you need to go vote for these people. I mean, there's a long process to get them to understand what this is all about, why they should be voting, what the importance of their vote is, what the importance of voting for a certain person is based on the issues that will impact them and their jobs and their families.
Well, and listen, if you're watching this, I'd ask, do you have kids? Have you ever told those kids what to do? Say, do X or don't do Y. Do they listen? Do they do what you said? Or if you don't have kids, have you dealt with politicians? Because it's basically the same thing. And you go in there and say, I want you to vote this way. Are they going to do that? The same with employees. This is just how society is nowadays. If you walk in and say, you need to vote and vote this way, they're not going to listen. They're going to be turned off. And that's where you do create HR problems. You need to move them along this pathway where it ends up being their idea, where they come to that conclusion. And that doesn't happen overnight. So Rich is right. You've got to start somewhere. But to build up this, it does take multiple years, multiple election cycles to really do it right. Let's talk through that ladder. What are the steps you want them to take from start to finish, where you ease their members, their employees into it, and then start to build? What are those steps?
Sure. Well, I think first of all, you put together some issues that impact them, that impact the jobs, and you start talking to them about that. You start generally educating them, sharing information about it. Sometimes you could have focus groups. You could do a number of different things, pull meetings together, just talk about the issues.
And this is just without even saying vote a certain way, without even saying there's an issue on the ballot right now related to this. It's just starting to get them to think about issues, because in many cases people don't. So it's just the first step here is get their brain moving a little bit and connect with them a little bit, right?
Exactly. You have to start there.
Yeah. Okay. Then what's next? Where do you build from there?
So from there, then you start talking about voting. You start talking about elections, start informing them, educating them about the process. These issues are important, and these are also issues that, for example, the state legislature deals with every year, And so what you need to do is start connecting them and start having them talk about and figure out that these issues are the ones that are being voted on every day in their state legislature.
And then there's some easy ways to engage on that. You ask them, are you registered to vote? Here's a link you can check to see if you're registered to vote. And if not, here's instructions on how you can get registered. Just that. Give it something really easy, something really simple for them to do. And maybe that's the first election where you just say, hey, listen, check your registration. If you're not registered, we really encourage you to get registered to vote and go vote. This is huge, because think about your members. They're not going to say no to that going to their employees. It's just voter registration. You got to ease into this process. And so just checking your registration, getting registered is a great entry place. And then from there, you can get into the elections. Here's your election dates. We really encourage you to vote. That's it. Not who to vote for, not what's on the ballot. Just, man, we really would love for you to get to vote, and maybe give them, hey, you can take one shift off if you go out and vote, or something like that to incentivize them and to make it easy for them. But it's easing them in. What else? How does this path continue to grow?
So then I think the next step after that, Collin, is connecting the candidates with the issues that are important to them. And the way you can do that is you can actually put together, a questionnaire, send it out to all the candidates, have them answer it, and then bring that information back, share that information with the employees, and just say, as you're considering voting this year, just wanted to let you know these are the issues we've talked about the last couple of years that are important to you, and wanted to let you know these are where the different candidates stand on those issues.
Yeah, it's a huge, powerful tool. These candidates, many of them will fill that out, especially if it's coming from a reputable association or organization. They'll fill that out. You can then disseminate that based on which candidates cover those different regions, those different areas, and those members love it, because it's fair, it's balanced. It's, hey, we gave the same questionnaire to every candidate on both sides of the aisle, or if it's a nonpartisan, to every candidate in the race. Let them answer it. And here, without edits, without filters, we're giving you those answers as members and as employees for you to read before you go to vote. It's a huge, powerful tool. And here's the thing, you controlled the questions. So every question in there is going to be related to your industry, to their jobs, to what matters to them. So you're safe to just say, here, copy, paste, this is what they said, but it's on all the topics that matter to your people. And again, we're starting to connect those dots for those employees to think about, man, this issue is important, and I really should be voting based on these issues. Once they connect those dots in their head, that's power. And then you take it to the next level. I know scorecards are a big thing. Talk to me about that.
So basically, following the election, then obviously there's a legislative session. Following the session, then take those issues that were voted on, specific bills, perhaps pull out 10 of them or so, and score each of the legislators on how they voted. And then you can come up and see, of those candidates that were running, this is how they voted on each of those things. And you can come up with a score. If you have 10 questions, maybe they only got 5 out of 10, so that's 50%. Then when you're coming into the next election season, you have a basis for those incumbents who are running again. You're starting with that, adding in the questionnaires the next time, but you already have a basis and going in then what those incumbents voted last
Yeah,
time.
and you can even share that between elections. Again, just it's informing them, keeping them engaged, because you don't want a year or two to go between elections before you touch them again on something election related. So you want to find those opportunities to do so. And what's great about those scorecards is it's fair and balanced. It's only on your issues, so it's really not, but it's a fair way to objectively say, hey, to our employees, to our members and their employees, to the issues that matter to you, that you should be paying attention on, here's where these policymakers, here's where they are, here's what their score is. You're not saying, hey, we like this one and we don't like that one. You're saying, here's the full list, here's what their scores are. It's a fair and balanced way that no one can say you're picking sides, no one can say you're being partisan. It's really hard for HR or outside groups to poke holes in this because it's just an objective way to go about the process. So we've really seen that work very well. Now you're getting into the more active. If you've been down this pathway, you're probably 2-3 years into this process, and now you've got members and their employees who are a lot more politically engaged. So now how do you tap into that? What's sort of the end of this process where you can get them even more engaged in politics?
Well, I think even building on the elections, Collin, you have to start getting involved in legislative sessions. And you can do that, like for one of the associations we work with, they put out a weekly kind of advocacy email that talks about things that are going on in the state legislature, ways that you can impact that. For example, you can sign on to a letter to the editor on an issue. You can, write your legislator.
Yeah.
You can file a witness slip. Just giving them things to do, which gets them
post
much
on
more
social
engaged.
media, even just post
Exactly.
about this. Yeah.
And it's getting them excited about the election, about what's going on, about government advocacy, and at that point, now they're excited to vote.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. At the end of this process, you now have an advocacy outreach list that you can then send things to get people. If you were a political organization, we'd say you have a bunch of volunteers. It's that same concept. You have a bunch of people who you've engaged, who you've gotten to think about politics, to care about politics. So now, when you need people to show up to things, to take advantage of opportunities, to participate in certain activities, you don't just have your list of members. You've got that times however many people are involved in those different companies. You've got a huge outreach list to be involved with. It takes several years to get to that point, don't get us wrong, but that's the power here. If you really invest yourself in this and involve yourself in this, think of how powerful that could be, is if you show up not just with owners and employers, but employees, the working people, the working families, especially in a state like Illinois where it's very worker focused when it comes to the way we approach things as policymakers and as media. If you show up not just with the owners, but also the workers, that gets attention. That really takes our issues to the next level. And so if you can do this, where you start to shift from being very high level focused to being sort of bottom up focused, that's going to get you so much more attention and make you so much more politically powerful when you're trying to advocate for or against certain issues. So that's where then I want to talk about examples of how this has worked. So we talked through kind of the process. We've seen this be really powerful in a number of situations. So Rich, I want to ask you, how have you seen this really make an impact on the public policy process?
Well, I think the one that really stands out was several years ago, the governor when he was trying to, if you recall, the constitutional amendment on the progressive tax. One of our association members came to us and was very upset about the whole thing and wanted to find out what they can do. We talked about maybe, this was a huge thing, this was going to be statewide. Yep. We were fighting major forces. This thing was already polling at what, 75%?
It was almost 75% support at the polls. It had $50 million on its side, I think they had to try to push this and make it happen. It was the governor's top policy priority. Everyone said, you can't stop this, don't even try. There was massive forces here.
Yeah, and so we decided we're going to have to get a coalition together. So we went out and we found like-minded associations, got them interested. Probably about a year before it actually happened, we had some time. We just started building this and building it and building it. And by the end, I think we had close to 50 associations involved, Collin.
And here's the power, right? Because we didn't just say, hey, let's go out and do some press releases and do some stuff. The whole goal was a grassroots effort to reach not the members, their employees. This whole thing is about the employees. So of those roughly 50 associations, if you remember off the top of your head, we had done the math on how many employees that actually was. Do you remember what that was?
30,000 employees.
It was like 30 to 35,000.
30,000 members.
Okay, it was 30,000 members.
Like millions of it, like 5 million employees.
I don't think it was 5 million, but it was a couple million. Yeah, it was in the millions in terms of employees.
Yeah, employees that worked for all of those associations.
Thousands of members, millions of employees. And so our whole goal was, let's get to the employees. Let's get past just going to the members themselves, and let's get down down to the employees. And so the whole project, and we give credit to a lot of these associations that we work with, they did a ton of work. We helped support them. And it was all about not your usual process is reach the members. This was get to the employees, create grassroots. And we had people going out and speaking to employees. We had signs going up, signs being delivered to member companies who then would distribute it to their employees, and they were putting it up in their yards. People were doing social media posts, doing events, doing online things. I mean, it was just, there was so much activity from the grassroots side, and it was all based on let's reach out to the employees. And this coalition, with help from a few other groups, but this coalition led the charge and was able to take that 75% issue, drop it down to what, 46, 47? 46 at the end?
And it needed 60.
Yeah, and it needed 60. They blew it out of the water with basically no budget. I mean, there was very little money spent, part of this group.
Yeah.
It was all shoe leather, and it was this idea of reaching to their employees. The power here, that was a major, major political win in politics that would not have happened if those associations did not have an outreach effort to the employees, not the members. They did reach members, but it was focused on reaching the employees. I've seen it work even just in Cook County. I've seen when they've tried to pass, this was a handful of years ago, when they tried to pass a number of ordinances that would make it harder for businesses to do business in the state and in the county. And an association engaged a lot of chambers of commerce, but then they engaged a lot of their members and their member employees, and they were able to stop those ordinances from ever coming to pass. And it was a major policy win for them at the local level, and it went to their efforts to reach employees and engage those employees in the process, and yeah, their members and the chambers and other groups too. But the power in politics now is not at the top. It's not, there was a day where Rich or I could walk in a room and say, hey, Mr. Policymaker, Mrs. Policymaker, we want you to vote this way or that way, and maybe change their mind. That's a long, long, long time ago in the past. Now the only way to change their mind is through pressure. If they think their job is in jeopardy, now they might change their mind. And pressure comes from the grassroots. It doesn't come from one or two or three people. It comes from hundreds or thousands of people contacting them or signing on to things or signing a petition or liking a Facebook page or just showing that breadth of power. That's what will scare these lawmakers into actually doing the right thing and voting the right way. Not a press release, not going out and doing one event or one roundtable. You need numbers, and numbers comes from getting beyond just your members to those actual employees. All right, closing thoughts on this, on maybe something we didn't cover about how you do this or why it's so important, or just something you want to reiterate as we close?
I just think it's just so important, like you said, reaching to those employees. And, to the members, I think, when we first talk about this with them, they always say, I really don't want to talk politics with my employees. They're not there. It's just a very touchy subject for them. And I think when you can provide them a program and provide them kind of a way to get there and show them these things, I think, they tend to loosen up a little bit, and we can show them examples, and there's definitely a way to do this.
Well, yeah, and that's part of the reason why we have that sort of slower, more organic process. It's not just for the employees to accept this and work their way down this path. It's also for the members. Because some of the members might say, okay, you can do voter registration, just not this. And then, 6 months later, okay, no one complained about that. That worked really well. Okay, you could bring a lawmaker in to meet my employees for lunch and talk about, answer their questions. Like, there's a path here, even just to get the members comfortable with it. So I totally agree. And I'll close with this, just the value of this, the power of what you can accomplish when you do this. I know it's not a natural thing for a lot of associations, but if we're going to make an impact in the political process, we need numbers. Understand that what we see, so we've got a polling company as well, and what we see in polling a lot lately is the people who are willing to change their minds on issues are those working families. Yeah, union leadership, some of the higher level progressive leadership that are leading some of these ideological coalitions, or maybe even like Hispanic coalitions. Yeah, they might be more far left, but when you get down to like Hispanic families or shop workers or working class households that are union members, many of them are they may not vote conservatively, but they actually are conservative on the issues. No one's just engaged them. No one's talked to them about why this matters. And what we've seen is when they hear, without the Republican or Democrat word, without conservative or liberal or progressive, when you just talk about the issues themselves, it's those working class households, those Hispanic households when it comes to manufacturing. It's the African American households when it comes to jobs and these opportunities and the apprenticeships. How when you just talk about the issues that we all agree with as business-related, free market-related associations and organizations, they're with us. It's just when you add in those political terms that we lose them. And so if they're with you on the issues, you can get them on your side. You just have to actually engage them. And we've seen it poll after poll after poll. These employees that we're talking about, it's fertile ground. It is ready for you to plant that seed. It's already fertilized. It's already ready to go. They're just waiting for someone to engage them directly because they're hearing it from the other side. They're not hearing it from our side. And we've seen it. When you engage them, they're interested. They're excited. These are the people who want to be the shop owners. They want to be the business owners. They want to be entrepreneurs. They want the next opportunity. They are free market types. They just don't ever hear from us because our message tends to be kept away from them on purpose. This is your way to take your message directly to them. And I'm telling you, we've seen it in our own examples on the association side, in the polling we've seen it, where when you do this, it has a tremendous impact. So please think about it. Contact us. Rich is ready to help you. Our team is ready to help you. Really engage on this space. It is absolutely worthwhile. It's a bit of work. But it's absolutely worthwhile to do if you want to have an impact, especially in a state like Illinois, where many of our issues tend to be ignored down in Springfield, and you got to bust some heads and bust down some doors to make people pay attention. This is a great way to do it. Thanks to Rich for joining me on this, and we'll continue to give you guys tips and tricks on how you can engage, but please think about how you might reach out to your members and let us know how we can help, even if it's just to share some ideas that you then take for free and go and do on your own without hiring Rich, without hiring us. That's fine. We just want to help. So please reach out and let's talk.